I'm Christine Gould. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought for Food, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here tonight for our live session with Emma Chow and Mike Werner, who are part of the Food Lab Accelerator at Google. Emma's with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in her day-to-day job. Mike is with Google, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But first, I just kind of wanted to introduce why we're here tonight, and it's to talk about circular economy of food. And we're here to kind of like dive deep into that in the spirit of kind of elucidating all of the opportunities in this space for you TFF Challenge participants to innovate within, because I hope that you are planning to join the special prize that we are launching this year on the circular economy of food as part of the TFF Challenge. These live sessions are here to really get the chance to hear from experts and to really gain some new perspectives that can help us as we're designing our solutions, and to hopefully arrive at some new insights and breakthroughs that can help us develop these solutions in a direction that really is going to make the most impact and be transformative. As you may have heard in the pre-discussion that I was having with Chelsea before we hit the hour, hey Mike! Thought for Food is all about next generation innovation in food and ag. And next generation innovation is, meant in the literal sense, like because we're trying to bring a new generation of innovators and entrepreneurs into this space that is ripe for reinvention. But it's also meant to, be about a set of attitudes and values that the next generation inherently represents, but anyone at any age in any part of the world and in any job can actually embrace and leverage to think about things in new ways. But one of the superpowers that I have come to understand that young people really represent is that, you are all not only digital natives because you've grown up in this, digitally connected world, which has led to you having open mindsets and collaborative attitudes sort of solving the world's problems, but you're also sustainability natives. You're naturally thinking about sustainability and impact and purpose as you're developing businesses and going forward into your careers. This is really, really powerful. And in that vein, I think like circularity principles, whether you call them that or not in your lives, are inherent to like how you think about things. But with that in mind, we want to hear from some experts in this space. And so we're really delighted to have our collaborators from Ellen MacArthur and Google here tonight. And so I'd like to, let them introduce themselves, if you don't mind. Maybe Emma, starting with you, can you tell us, your role, what is Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and kind of a little bit about, what you think about circular economy and, Thought for Food and this challenge we're running together.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be joining you. I'm joining tonight from the Isle of Wight in England, and I know there's people all over the world, so great to have you joining, and thanks for signing on to the challenge. And hopefully tonight will provide some color to what circular economy means as applied to food and the value it can bring. So a bit about me. I, as you can tell, I'm not native to England, but I'm actually from Canada, from Toronto. Spent some time living in the US and then moved over to England for working at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation nearly 2 years ago to join specifically to focus on food. And I now lead what we call our food initiative, which is all about mobilizing this vision for how we apply circular economy principles, which we'll get into in greater detail later in the conversation, but how we apply that to food and the specific role that cities and urban spaces can play in helping to unlock a healthy trajectory for the global food systems. So a bit of history as well. This project kicked off officially in June of this year, and we're now in the midst of a 3-year mobilization phase. But before that happened, we spent a year of analysis really understanding the drawbacks of today's linear system and what defines it, qualifies it as linear, and then what potential there is for applying circular economy principles to shape systemic solutions and quantifying the benefits, the social, economic, and health benefits it could bring, which we found were significant, and we published those findings and the vision in a report called Cities and Circular Economy for Food in January at Davos with the World Economic Forum earlier this year. So that's just a bit of background on me and the work that I've done at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation.
Great. And really quick, before we let Mike introduce himself, can you maybe just explain a little bit about, like, because Ellen MacArthur Foundation has really put the word circular economy like on the map and in our everyday vernacular. So can you explain a little bit about what Ellen MacArthur Foundation is and who Ellen MacArthur is?
Yeah. Yes. So we are a global NGO. We do work around the world. We're nearly 10 years old now. And we were founded on our mission of accelerating the global transition to a circular economy. So we work across all sorts of industries, and we are the ones who put circular economy on the map in those early days, nearly 10 years ago, writing reports, developing this vision and narrative. And it's really about shaping, realizing that today's entire economy is dependent on finite resources. It's hugely wasteful. And it's damaging both the human health and ecosystems, and therefore it simply isn't fit to function long-term. Businesses and humans, ecosystems will not thrive in today's system. And rather than just trying to tweak and optimize the current paradigm, the reason why we formulated this vision of circular economy is saying, actually, let's pause and we can fundamentally redesign entire systems, entire products, and let's prove that that can be done. So that's where the motivation for having specific industry-focused projects came. So I, of course, am speaking on behalf of food, but we're very well known for our work in plastics with the new plastics economy, which is behind the figure of by 2050 there will be more plastics than fish in the ocean if we follow business as usual. And we see that now really sparking this tidal wave of movement around the world and momentum from industry and consumers alike. And we also have a project on fashion called Make Fashion Circular. And most recently in October, we launched a new piece of work that's focused on finance. So not necessarily a material stream industry, but obviously investment dollars have such a big enabling or barrier role, and we want to make it an enabler, of course, and set those conditions. So we launched the first circular economy fund with BlackRock in October of this year. So lots of exciting projects, and many of you are probably wondering, who is Ellen MacArthur? She is referred to as Dame Ellen MacArthur, and the reason why she has that qualification and that special Dame in front of her name is because she did something truly incredible in 2004, setting the world record at the time for the fastest solo circumventure by boat around the world. And it was that journey, after that journey, that she stepped off the boat and she thought to herself, this challenge that I had to deal with for several months while on a boat alone, managing finite resources and trying to beat the clock, optimize those resources, is not confined to my experience on the boat, but actually our entire economy is dealing with this challenge, and we aren't dealing with it in a good way today. And what could the alternative be? And so that was really the seed that planted all of this work. And what we are now as an organization, we're about 150 people working in China, Europe, North America, and Brazil, covering Latin America.
Absolutely. That's so amazing. And my mind is like buzzing because all of those industries that you mentioned, like plastics and fashion and finance, I mean, food is also inextricably linked, agriculture too, all of these industries. So it's exciting to see kind of like where we can synergize here. So Mike, I mean, everyone knows Google. I think that's part of the reason we have 21 attendees, from all over the world tonight, is we have like these two incredible organizations. But I'd love if you could describe a little bit about what is a tech company's interest in circular economy of food. And tell us about what you're up to in your role.
Oh, it's a great question. And maybe just first start, hi, everybody. Mike Werner. I lead circular economy for Google. And this is about working cross-functionally across the business to address the use of resources and to achieve our new vision, which from a circular economy perspective, which is to become a circular Google in a sustainable world. Recognizing that circular economy is fundamental and sort of part of this whole journey of sustainability that we're on. And as an outcome of that work, our circular economy goal, is to maximize the reuse of finite resources including food, but so across our operations, products, supply chains, and enable others to do the same. And it's that last piece that I'm really excited about, especially when I engage with various audiences, is to think about what role does our technology play to support the circular economy. Last week, I was in Stockholm with some of Emma's colleagues, announcing Google as a technology partner to the New Plastics Economy Initiative. And this is directly in line and congruent with how we've been thinking about our technology to support various aspects of sustainability, whether that is with Project Fishing Watch or Project the Global Forest Watch, or if it's Project Sunroof, as we think about supporting renewable energy, or the Environmental Insights Explorer to help cities create and understand climate action plans. And so it's very much in continuity of this as we think about the really important role that we play and the unique skills that we have to support a circular economy. And we need everybody. We need everybody's unique skills and talents at play here, whether you're a packaging producer, a food producer, you're in the built environment with real estate, you're in a data center operations, or technology, it doesn't matter. We need everybody all in lockstep together, bringing their talents. So, more specifically within Google's operations, we've got data centers, we've got our supply chains, we've got hardware. We've got a range of levers that we can pull and influence that we have in the market. Mm-hmm. So hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing. I already see that there's a question coming in about data, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but I want to give everyone here a quick overview of kind of like the flow of the conversation, because we, have limited time today, but there's going to be like a whole rollout of content around this topic to, again, facilitate teams who are participating in the TFF challenge to take their ideas, make them based on circular economy principles, and enter them into this special prize category. But today, what we really want to talk about is like kind of introducing at a conceptual level, what is the circular economy of food? What do we mean by that? And, a little bit at a high level, what is the circular economy of food challenge that we're running, and how we can like take the solutions that TFF challenge participants are developing and, kind of take them in this direction so that they're really thinking in circularity principles and circular economy principles. And I'll get to that in 1 minute. But I want to just ask to Google specifically, to your point about how we need everyone working on this. That's why I think it's really exciting that we have a platform like TFF involved in working with both of your organizations, because we're essentially like mobilizing the next generation of innovators in every part of the world to be part of building solutions in this space. So it's linking, technology, experts in the field, who've like put circular economy on the map, with this like ecosystem of innovators who really understand locally relevant solutions, and we can start sharing and collaborating and hopefully build these kind of like breakthroughs that can transform the world. And at TFF, we've built like this digital labs platform, which is like a knowledge platform, but it's more than that, because it also is about sharing and collaborating. So it's like, I'm working on this solution here in Nairobi. Hey, I'm doing one here in Indonesia that's similar. How can we like work together to share enabling technologies and best practices and ideas and know-how, et cetera, that can accelerate the speed and impact of beneficial innovation, reduce duplicative efforts so that, we can start to see these things happen. And I see Google playing a big role in that too, because you guys have lots of data that's open and, kinds of tools for collaboration, et cetera. So maybe can you speak a little bit about like how you see Google playing a role in like fostering global collaboration towards this, type of profound change we're trying to make?
Well, great question. Google's mission 21 years ago started off with organizing the world's information and making it accessible and useful. And while that mission hasn't changed, the way that we express it and operationalize it has changed, where we've gotten involved in a range of topics, and from a sustainability standpoint, looking at ways of how can we synthesize information, bring it to people, and democratize the impact in a beneficial way. So just last week, we announced a new feature within, just as by way of an example, a new feature within Google Assistant that enables you to make better recycling decisions in North America. So partnering with Earth 911 and understanding what pieces of infrastructure exist around the US, for example. And now enabling users to say, okay, Google, how do I recycle my plastic water bottle? And based on your geolocation, you'll get tuned results based on what the local municipality in which you're located will accept.
Oh
And so
my
this is
God.
so this is
Amazing.
so this is a great way as we think about using our platforms, our reach, to be able to democratize the impact of information and making it useful.
Awesome. My mind is buzzing with so many things I still want to deep dive into, but let's focus on some of the things I think that will help the teams. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Emma, a little bit first, which is what is circular economy and how is it different than circularity? Are these interchangeable words, or, can you just describe for us so we really understand what we're looking for here?
Yes, so there is a distinction, and circular economy, just to start at the most basic level, we define it as three core principles. Well, three core principles underpin circular economy. The first is about designing out waste and pollution. It's about keeping materials and products in use at their highest value for as long as possible. And it's about regenerating natural systems. So actually improving and having net positive impacts. And I think that's the big distinction as well between what I'll classify as classic sustainability narrative, which can sometimes sit in the let's undo the damage, but we're okay with staying in the current paradigm, which essentially can just mean pushing out that end date farther away, rather than actually we need to not just address the symptoms, but address the underlying problems, the systemic problems, and we need to redesign systems. And we actually, if we take that design approach, can fundamentally redesign systems so that the impacts for people, ecosystems, and ultimately business are positive. And with food, we have so much great hope sitting within this industry because food is part of nature. And we can really activate that third principle around regenerating natural systems in ways that we simply can't with a technical material like plastics. So with those three principles in mind, when we start to move into using the word circularity only, something that can sometimes flip in people's minds is, oh, circularity means just the circularity of a material stream cycling.
Like a recycle, reuse kind of thing.
Which can address some, but not all of those three principles. So you could have like a circular product that maybe is made of materials that otherwise would have been wasted, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those materials were originally grown in ways that regenerated natural systems.
Right. So I'm hearing some big, tough things that we need to adopt if we really want to develop circular economy approaches. One is it's about design fundamentals, right? So we need to incorporate, I guess, some of these really, I don't know if it's design thinking per se, but really starting from not just like you said, trying to tweak the, current existing solutions or get as much out of them as possible, but really starting how do we optimize from the very beginning. And the other thing that I think is tough maybe for a lot of people is this whole systems thinking perspective and thinking that every part of how you're innovating, what's the system around it and behind it and how do you address that? So can you give us some really practical tips and tricks that can simplify what sounds really, really tough and overwhelming maybe to an average person?
Yeah, so I like to really follow what I'll call the food journey, and stop at every moment along that journey and think about what are the activities. But starting with at the farm level, how are the ingredients being grown? Are there opportunities to reimagine that at the farm level? And we do see that with regenerative farming practices, which come in different forms, from agroforestry, where it's layering in trees and tree canopy and helping to pull down carbon from the atmosphere, or agroecological practices, regenerative agriculture by name, managed grazing for livestock. So that's one piece of it. Then it's about what happens afterwards. If you're making a food product, you're bringing together all sorts of ingredients and you're processing them in some way. are you creating waste along the way that actually isn't waste at all? Because in circular economy, we want to design out that concept of waste altogether, and it wouldn't be waste, but actually it's feedstock for another use that maybe you don't use, but someone else in the system. So it's really moving from this mindset. It is so much embedded in mindset, mindset of value chain, which is linear, to really like a value network and ecosystem approach. So it does fundamentally demand, and this is why it's so challenging, it demands new ways of working and new collaborations. But that's why I think from a food products perspective, there's so much opportunity to go all the way upstream to the design. And we talk about the like circular design principles.
Yeah.
What are those for food? It's like design with nature in mind, design so byproducts are used as ingredients, designed to promote agrobiodiversity. There's so many principles we could come up with. But what we've developed and will be used as a reference piece in the challenge is basically like a metrics table, which we're hoping is helpful for people, especially people who are new to circular economy, to start to break down what are those steps in the journey and how would I measure where I am in terms of impact, and how can we judge this as a product that's contributing to circular economy.
And yeah, for everybody listening and those who will watch the webinar recording, Emma hit the nail on the head. We have this metric table that's going to be available to all participants in the TFF challenge, where you can kind of like evaluate, your meeting of the criteria and how you're like approaching these principles. So check out the digital labs modules for all of this information. And then like turning over to you, Mike. So I heard a lot of like interesting words like agroforestry, regenerative, canopies, learning from nature, etc. So I happen to personally be like a total science enthusiast. So I'm very excited by the potential for science and biotech, to solve some of our challenges. Do you see that these types of technologies can play a role in moving us towards circular economy approaches? And I mean, I was excited to see like Ginkgo Bioworks, a big Boston startup, and Microbes have, partnered with Ellen MacArthur. But I'd love to hear like what your view is on the role of science and technology moving us towards solutions in this space. And in the technology space, things like blockchain and, all kinds of other, potential areas that could be exciting.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm familiar with a little bit familiar with the Ginkgo Bioworks approach, and I think that there is definitely a role for technology in science and technology to play in addressing some of our issues. And I think we also need to be a bit cautious about some of these that may purport to be I'm not referencing Ginkgo's
Of course, yeah.
Whether they're silver bullet solutions in some ways. I think, going back to what Emma said, which is this belief that, or the suggestion, this ideal that we learn from nature, which has evolved over billions of years to cycle nutrients endlessly. And what does that look like for us, both on the technical and biological side? I think that there has been what has been clearly studied is that when people believe they can compost, they care less about food waste, and yet there is tremendous impact embodied in the production of food, and when that is wasted, all of those emissions and all of those resources in some ways are for naught. And we have partnered with Lean Path to use science and technology to, in some ways, simple technology to really characterize and understand and measure what we're doing on a pre-consumer basis to inform, how could we avoid food waste to begin with, and what does optimization look like, what do new menus look like, what does repurposing of food look like, all safety considerations to bear, for example. I think that's an important way that technology can play a role, which is how, we don't often take action until we understand what the impacts are. I think that there's also a role for understanding safe chemistry. I'm a chemist, a scientist by training, and this notion of being both safe and circular is incredibly important. And some of the things that are coming under more and more scrutiny is the way in which we package food, and what does contaminate. I saw a comment in here about contamination of food, and it's not just food waste, but it's also the packaging that we're using, whether it is compostable food packaging with fluorinated chemistry for oil resistance, or other forms of packaging. I think that there's a role for better science to understand what we could do to improve there.
Amazing. And I also heard from Emma talking about like, it's about a mindset shift, right? And moving from like this value chain to a value network and adopting new ways of working. And inherent to that, of course, is new business models. So I'd really love to understand how, this all sounds great, but like, how do you actually like make money doing this in our current structure? You know, how do you find incentives in our current economic structure and investment structure? How do you find incentives that get people to move towards this? Is it like a marketing and branding effort? Is it something that you really see that, you know, some exciting business models that are really taking off that can inspire some of our challenge participants? How do we think about this?
Yeah, I can share just from our latest experiences with some of our partners and even engaging with externals and broad, diverse stakeholder networks. A few pieces. One is on de-risking supply chains, especially in an era of increasingly frequent climate change shocks, right? There's drought, there's flooding, and that deeply affects the predictability and consistency and price of ingredients for food companies, for instance. So one piece is, how do you best de-risk your supply chain? And it's shown that using regenerative practices that keep soil at the heart of it. Healthy soils means that you're resilient and you're able to adapt to climate change shocks. And at the same time, you have this dual benefit of helping play this climate mitigation role and helping suck down that carbon from the atmosphere. So farming has such a big role to play, and the supply chain de-risking is a big business play. The other piece is really the pull from the consumers. And again, we see in public spheres this emergence, this rapid emergence of climate change, biodiversity, really raising up in the public agenda. And citizens are demanding business politicians to respond. And so it is in business interest, from gaining a brand premium and competitive advantage, to be able to provide products and offerings that meet those changing consumer values. Because consumers want to express these values, but right now you can't walk into the grocery store and be like, I'm going to buy some apples that are tackling climate change.
Yeah,
that's possible, but the reality is that's not our common every day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that pull for sure. And again, the one final piece, and this is why we have a stance in finance, is we need to get investor dollars and those shareholders to be able to funnel money to these businesses that are applying, are circular, are helping support circular economy. And the reason why we call it circular economy is because it started as a business play. It's not confined to just the CSR department of a company or sustainability. It needs to speak to all of these stakeholders, and we need to prove that there is a clear business case. And often, this is what we're doing right now with some of our corporate partners on the project, is building the momentum internally. And how do you start even with a single product? How do you show an iconic product that everyone can point to and say, you know what, this helped our business, and now we should be letting that proliferate to our entire product portfolios, and this is where we need to head.
So we need these iconic products, examples out there to kind of like show what can be done. Do you have any top of mind that you can share that have actually influenced new, you know, big businesses especially to like change course because they've seen like, wow, this really works and I can make money and, you know, have bottom line impact at the end of the day?
Yes, I would say right now it's very difficult to be able to point to anything that I would say is like perfectly a circular
Mhm.
product, but we definitely see aspects of circular economy and this design thinking being embodied in different organizations. We see big companies like General Mills and Barilla, the pasta company, doing a lot of work at the farm level, trying to advance towards regenerative practices, setting goals around really like zero waste in their processing facilities. We see again on sticking with the Barilla front, they're now working with Planetarians, who's one of our innovators in our network, who takes the sunflower seed cake when you make sunflower oil, and that's a byproduct from making the oil, but it's really fibrous, it has protein in it, and that can be a flour that now Barilla is using as at least a portion of their ingredients in a pasta. Also, I think very much more well known, people have probably heard of, or there are several brands out there that take bread that otherwise would have gone wasted, and turning that into beer. There's quite a bit on using different byproducts, even the spent grain from beer brewing. AB InBev has done lots of work on really saying we shouldn't just burn this for biofuel, but actually there's much higher value to be gained, again, because there are nutrients that are good for human nutrition contained. So they released, I think it was last year, a couple of years ago, a brand called Canvas Drinks, and they were creating a line of that was targeted at bottom of the pyramid populations, again, to take that byproduct, use it as one of the main ingredients, and help tackle nutrition issues, which are obviously very significant on the global scene. I could keep going.
No, I mean, that's fantastic. And so, like, Mike, turning over to you, like, could I ostensibly take any idea or product that I'm working and make it a circular economy product by, like, kind of adopting this mindset and thinking of these principles? Is there potential for everything we're doing to kind of become circular economy if we think about it in new ways?
It's a great question, and I would say following the diagram in a simplistic way, but following the diagram, visual representation of a circular economy that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has put out there is a great first place to start. And would layer in that there are elements that are not expressed within the diagram that are important considerations. For example, the safe piece, the safe and circular piece, or certainly on the agriculture side, addressing the kinds of pollution and other production considerations that Emma was talking about are important to be thinking about holistically. And when I think about some pitfalls of folks sort of short-term thinking, or I should say narrow thinking, is that a gate-to-gate approach of like what comes in and what goes out is not enough. So to be thinking across the entire life cycle is essential. Simply recycling one thing is not enough. I think there's got to be this consideration of what the successive life cycles are. Now, around food, if it's an agricultural product, you're in some ways defining or limited in some ways to what the end of life is. But for example, if it means taking a food waste byproduct, hybridizing it into a technical material and then expecting the technical cycle to solve for that, that is something that I think needs serious consideration, because it's shifting burden from one place into another, and that technical system may not be able to support it. So that's another thing. And I think just weighing in on something that Emma had shared as well, which is that burning something and converting those molecules from the physical form into the gaseous form and putting CO2 and while capturing some form of electrical energy is an interim solution. I would say that is not a truly circular approach.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's super helpful. And yeah, I mean, so the TFF challenge exists basically to like incentivize our innovator community who hail from 160 countries, right, to start to like innovate in this direction. And so to clarify one of the questions that came through, every single person who submits a pitch into the TFF challenge is eligible for the TFF challenge prizes. So that's the winner, the grand prize and the runner-up prize. But you can also opt in for this special prize from the flag partners, which involves a lot of perks, from all of these amazing organizations, specialized mentoring, the chance to get incubation with MISTA, the chance to, kind of be recognized by all of these organizations for your solution. So I wanted to clarify that question, like you join both. But the idea is, a dream scenario is that we're taking every single TFF challenge entry and making it a circular economy solution. Because imagine then what our world would look like if every single food innovation and solution that's developed is incorporating this mindset and these principles. So I just wanted to hear a little bit from both of you about what kind of goals you have with the TFF challenge and with this opportunity you have with the next generation of innovators. And like I said, this is the first of many conversations we're going to have with the flag partners. And this is kind of the kickstart, this path as people are going through the challenge process. But, give them some inspiring words of what you're looking for and, what does good look like and what's your vision for partnering with us?
Can I take it first?
Please, yes.
So one of the things that comes to mind is how nature innovates, and I'm channeling now Dr. John Werner, the father of green chemistry, who inspired this thinking.
Are you related to him?
I am not. There was a mutation along the way. He is.
Oh yeah, you said Werner, not Werner. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's a great friend and brilliant mind in this space. But we were talking about the role of innovation and how why is it that large traditional corporations struggle to advance novel and amazing change in the world, and oftentimes it's because businesses reach this point in their evolution where they are strictly focused on consistency and predictability and uniformity, and that drives out a lot of the unpredictable nature of innovation. Innovation is a process of change, and this is where the startup culture, these innovation challenges are essential, because what this is supporting those natural aberrations that are happening out there in the exact same way that nature innovates. Nature's innovation are these cell mutations that sprout off entire different lineages. And that's where I think I'm so excited about this challenge, and to be thinking like, how can you all inspire us to be thinking about what it is that we could do in the future?
Amazing. I love that. And that's exactly like what we're trying to do, is just get all of these crazy ideas and see what sticks. And exactly, it's like a messy process, but it's going to lead to something amazing, just like nature does. Emma, what about you? What's your kind of vision and, words of
let me share a few words. So for us, June is a big milestone of many food events. It's the Eat Forum, which happens each year, and that's where we launched the initiative earlier this year at the 2019 Eat Forum. It's the Consumer Goods Forum. It's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Annual Summit, and it's our food initiative, Circular Economy for Food Summit as well. So what I'm constantly thinking about is what is our CEO, what is Ellen going to be standing on stages talking about in June? And one of my goals is there are maybe even multiple iconic solutions coming out of this challenge that we can hold up there on stage as these guiding lights, and also put the pressure on the big food industry players as well, who sometimes can be slow to move and say, you know what, you can't make an excuse that this isn't possible because these guys have done it. And to have solutions, have food products that are as comprehensive as we can get. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to get perfectly circular products possibly out of this, but showing that we can look at these different stages of that food journey and get pretty darn good. And so that's one piece, is these iconic, inspiring solutions and products, these examples. Two is really understanding the learning journey and the design, because it is you guys have access to all of this content. And I'm keen to hear the feedback and understand what it means. Like, what are the holdups? When do you get stuck? What's useful from the content that's being shared that we should do more of? When are those light bulbs going off? That's another piece. 3 is testing these metrics. They are not final. They are our first take. And again, in this design thinking, prototyping, really spirit, it's about testing with you guys, and also again with the design principles. I should share that something that we as Ellen MacArthur Foundation have is within all of our programs, we have a design program which spans all industries, and we have an agenda, a 2025 agenda that seeks to engage or reach 80 million designers globally and engage 20 million. Food designers are a big subset of that. So a question I'm currently exploring is, what are the true needs when it comes to, again, an inspirational component and understanding the concept of circular design for food, and practical tools. Mm-hmm. So learning about your process, your needs is going to help inform our journey in developing tools that will help designers, whether they're chefs, menu designers, developers in school districts, even food product designers in big, small food companies, whomever, those millions of designers around the world, what do they need to apply this in their everyday?
I mean, how exciting is that to all of our participants? You have the chance to have your project profiled at these leading organizations at annual meetings next June. You have the chance to influence organizations like Google and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and have them learn from you and have these light bulb moments. And of course, like test out these like metrics, in real time and share back to them so that they can like really, shape the future direction of this whole space. So it's a huge opportunity, right, for co-creation and like also for, really profiling yourself and your innovation to the world. And I also love like food designer as a job of the future. So that's really cool, like talk about 21st century, type of innovation. And so basically we have, 15 minutes left. So I'm going to take some of the questions that people have been typing in. Travis Andren, who I've seen is based in the US, because he shared a couple of links. He has been very active in the chat room. He's been asking, would Google have any interest in blockchaining sensor data derived by chemical contamination in food waste? I'm guessing that's the gist of something he's working on for his challenge.
It sounds like it could be. I think I'm getting up to speed on the open ledger concept and the diffuse nature of and transparent nature of information, out there on the open web via blockchain. I'm not entirely sure what the question is getting at with respect to sensors and contamination of food waste. It sounds like potentially dealing with tracking that potential impact into its next life cycle. Happy to learn more if Travis, if you can share some information. We can't make any promises, but would love to learn more.
Yeah, and I think that's part of this process too, is like through the digital labs, we invite you to sign up for mentoring from our, ecosystem of experts in this space. And also there's peer-to-peer mentoring options. So Travis, do reach out and we're happy to follow up on that whole like blockchain, area, as well as food waste and how we can think through the metrics around circular economy, excuse me. So Tiago Garcia wanted to understand the data digital economy, and can we look at like impact in the area of food data to impact the industry of as a whole for the info to meet system dynamics, data info and data processing. So I think Tiago's asking, it's like, can we look at like in this challenge, the impact that like making data more available, understandable, I guess harmonious, to help address some of these issues, could that be seen as a solution, that can help further circular economy?
Yeah, I can start on that, and Mike might have some thoughts as well. But for us, we see digital tools as playing a big enabling role. Again, for allowing the acceleration of realizing a circular economy for food. One thing that we're already starting to realize as a gap is how do we map the existing regenerative farms that are growing different foods at different volumes for different prices? How do we map those that are, for instance, because I should caveat, we're working with London, Sao Paulo, and New York as 3 cities. So we're already starting to pilot some solutions there as well. And it's like, how do we know what's out there and have transparency and then match that with the buyers in the city? And we're manually having to go through this process with some food service companies and such. And we're already realizing, oh, imagine if there was a digital platform that just provided that as like a matchmaking marketplace, so it made it easy and we actually had transparency into the practices, because that's what's missing right now is we don't have practices. And organic can be good, but not all organic is necessarily regenerative. So we do have to get to the outcome level. And on the opposite side, the same thing with waste flows. And there are some examples out there, like in New York, there's an organic resource mapping tool. What are those organic waste flows that are out there that are waste to someone, but they're feedstocks for another? And that starts to open up these opportunities, again, for creating entirely new business models, entirely new businesses that move those waste streams into revenue streams.
Mm-hmm. So it does sound like in this kind of nation state that a lot of these things are being developed, right? In the circular economy of food, like getting data and information out there is like really important, right? And so people can start to build around that. Okay, so Felipe is asking like, what is a good way to approach mapping the system design of a current process, product, or service? Thinking you might want to map first to see how and where it can be improved from a systems perspective. Are there some like maps and tools that people can use to start mapping systems around their solutions?
I'll just weigh in briefly. One of the very common tools is life cycle assessment. So there's an ISO standard out there, which it's 14040 or 14044. It's 14040. That sort of describes looking at inputs and outputs and the different processing steps of a particular product in mapping environmental impacts. I really like Emma's comments of doing, what did you say, the food journey, and walking at every single step of the line for each of the ingredients, each of the components, and really asking yourselves, what are the environmental impacts? What are the circular economy impacts? And that is an intensive exercise and may lead you to having more questions than answers, but it is a really valuable experience to be able to just understand that, I think, and assess and identify the complexity of the pieces of whether it's designing a circular product or addressing system constraints. SWOT can also be a useful tool in developing a stakeholder map of each of the places in which there is an experience. So I think those are similar but different tools that can all be complementary.
That's great. And it's also leading me to think like, let's on the digital lab start to create like in the resources section, you know, a compilation of some of these that can inspire people. And maybe that segued me to the next question, because maybe there's the opportunity to really create, and we've included that to a certain extent in the metrics table, but a really simple like canvas, such as business model canvas, that people can start to apply, right, for circular economy approaches. And that leads me to one of the questions around, do we need to have a business model canvas and brief description about the business model, you know, for these solutions? I mean, the answer is yes, but I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that a little bit, and then I can give that perspective from the TFF side of things.
I think having some kind of business model canvas is a good visual way to group the activities and what is the approach, and enabling us as judging committee as well to really understand what is the underlying thinking and how does this fit into the system, because it is with circular economy, could be entirely new business models that we don't see out there today, and finding an effective way to communicate that and showcase the logic behind it too.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And what I would layer in as well as a perspective for the audience is to be thinking about, to be thinking really deeply about the experience and designing for that experience. So there's a lot of focus from a business perspective on financial and performance value. So, performance within a circular economy, but there are also, so those are quantitative forms of value, but there are qualitative forms of value, which end up creating stickier and more valuable experiences. So how does it address emotional value in an even deeper form, identity, and then even deeper than that, meaning? And there are 15 core meanings. And what I'm channeling right now is a great designer and business professional entrepreneur, Nathan Shedroff, out of California College of the Arts. And you can go to Nathan at I believe it's Nathan.com. And as he has written a book on the 15 core meanings of individuals to create these really high impactful experiences, that I feel like we all could be doing a better job crafting, whether it's a product or a service around a circular economy. And I think the audience could find this to be a really interesting way of creating an engaging experience around the challenge.
Yeah, and if I can just pick up on that one note, because I'm glad you highlighted it. We talk about, we should view food as being designed in the same way that we could view like any consumer product, like a glass, right? There's design process going into it. But today in common realms, we don't talk about food as being designed. So that's an opportunity. But at the same time, we shouldn't see it as the same thing as a glass and approach it in that way, because food is the only thing out there that touches all of the senses.
Right.
And I think it's so important that we keep that at the forefront, because if food isn't delicious, no one's going to eat it. And no one will want it. So how are you creating things that food that speaks to identity, to culture, is relevant, is aspirational and desirable, and tastes amazing, and also happens to be good for you, right? But then how do you layer on, and we tend to talk about like marketing activities, but how do you create the brand around it? How are you planning to roll it out? I think that's a really critical piece on the business model and plan as well, because you can have a great product that checks all the boxes, but if it's sitting at the bottom of the grocery store shelf and not having the right promotion around it, it will soon be off the shelf and no longer stocked.
And that kind of leads me, I have two actually tough questions. I'm probably only going to be able to get to one from Victor. And so Fabian, who's coming from Solar's NG, I'm going to suggest that I reach out to you separately. And then we either take your question on a subsequent one of these live sessions, or we address that through a mentoring session, or both. But I'm going to take Victor's because it links very much to what we were just talking about. So Victor from Nigeria, who's a member of Team Rice Rangers, asks, how do we incorporate the circular economy principles and still have a competitive edge over other industry players and competitors? Since the art of refining eco-friendly and climate-friendly products developments is at most times a cost-intensive one. This said, how do we offset these costs and produce quality at a competitive price?
I think that goes right to my previous comments, which is you may not be able to compete at the lowest price point, but creating an experience that is emotionally connected and hits on the identity of people and the values of people, and even deeper the meanings. Some of these meanings within people include security, duty, accomplishment, beauty, community, truth. There's the whole raft of them, and your solution may not appeal to the masses. You may be appealing toward a particular segment that really cares about this. One of the ways that you can see this at work is by looking at the vehicle that people buy, or the watch that they're wearing, or the clothes that they're wearing, the kinds of things that they are purchasing and engaged in, or the experiences that they fund. speak to these kinds of pieces of being emotional and the identity and the meaning, because it may not be the highest performing product, it may not be the most cost competitive product, but it delivers an experience that really resonates with people. So I would say one approach, and there are many, is to focus on creating these really deep interactions that are engaging for your consumer, your target consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talk about how do we reconnect people with food all the time, and they are the unquantifiable, intangible piece. But how do you tell the story of the food, the people and the places behind it? And it's going to be very difficult to be cost competitive in today's food industry where we don't pay enough for food, right? The farmers are not getting paid well.
Right.
So that's going to be very challenging. So it is like, how do you actually create a different product where you're competing and you're targeting a subset of the market, and then create this positive feedback, like virtuous cycle as well through the supply chain. So it becomes the norm, and then it starts to cascade down to other segments of consumers. So that's one piece. Then two is, again, it goes to reimagining the whole realm of possibility. Is don't feel stuck in whatever the linear supply chain is and thinking you need to like try and find the premium supplier who uses better practices. But are there opportunities where you can almost like leapfrog over some of these illogical steps along the way where money gets pulled out, and connect directly with farmers? And that is another application for digital tools that we see examples of in many places around the world that link up, again, that supply at the farm level with the buyer who's actually transforming it into a product, rather than all of these traders in between.
Plus one to all of that.
Pardon me?
I said plus one to all of that.
Plus one, yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to just like give a kind of like very practical tip to you, Victor, and everyone on the call, which is that actually we have some great models from previous TFF teams, right, about how they've like developed business models that have made, you know, sustainability and circular economy and all of these approaches, interesting in the market and commanded premiums or whatever. So contact us and we can connect you with some of these other innovators, and you guys can do some like sharing and learnings, exchanges to really develop solutions relevant for your market in Nigeria or wherever you're going to be launching your solution. And I see I have one more question here. Travis, by the way, has offered to say that in his class, they've kind of developed a converted business model canvas, which doesn't just look at revenue streams, but look at like sustainability metrics. And so Travis, I'd ask maybe you can share that with us and we can include that in our Digital Labs curriculum, excuse me, to help direct teams. So, you know, we're here at the end of the hour. And so I'll just kind of like open it for last words from our, you know, guests today. If maybe you can just like kind of summarize a little bit about like what your big takeaway is from today and what's next, and then we'll close out the call. Oh no, are you guys there?
I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, this is really exciting. I'm really keen to see what comes out of it, and I hope that today was helpful and just a word of comfort as well for those who had potentially never heard of circular economy before. I'm sure a lot of what we threw out there today was very complex, possibly quite abstract. Please don't be scared off. Hopefully there is at least a seed of inspiration in there. Circular economy, again, is all about redesigning and leaning into that ambiguity and being able to adopt that systems perspective that we so urgently need more and more of in today's world. So I hope that you lean into that complexity and help really contribute in a big way to the solution space and inspire your peers, but also all of the different food players around the world.
As one of my former bosses and mentors said in Sources of Inspiration, Bill McDonough, that design is the first signal of human intention, and all of you our designers on a journey during this challenge, and would encourage you to consider being really attuned to toggling back and forth between your left brain analytical and your right brain creative, and tuning these experiences and these models, not just from a technical execution standpoint and really fitting within this model, but really addressing that human element, that engagement element to drive impact and change. Because as you go forward and you want to make this vision come to life that you have, make your product or your service come to life, you really need that human connection. People need to understand your narrative, your story, and to feel the inspiration that I undoubtedly you all feel. So I'm really excited. You are the aberrations in the world. You are unconstrained by a lot of the conventions within a normal large company. And so embrace that. And I know that it is uncomfortable because you may not have access to the right resources or the right information, but hopefully through this challenge, you'll be part of a network that can at least address some of those. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing the future here with you all.
Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. Music to my ears, because that is exactly what TFF is meant to be, is this platform for experimenting with new models for the future, to embrace complexity, to be the aberrations, to try, test, fail, share, and repeat, in the spirit of like innovation with purpose. So a big, huge, mega thank you to everyone who's called in from around the world to hear this exciting conversation. I'm sorry we didn't get to every single question, but like I said, there's more to come, and there's lots that we can do to start to collaborate and continue this discussion on the Digital Labs platform and via the mentorships and all of the resources that are available there. And a huge, also mega thanks to our guests today, Mike and Emma from Ellen MacArthur and Google. Just really thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to, inspire, but also provide really practical insights to our global innovator community. And we are so excited and thrilled to be working with you. And like you, I can't wait to see what's to come with this challenge. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.